Yo, 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 yo. What's up? What's up? What's up? Give up the rock to you. 4IS in the house. It's good to see you. Today, we're going to be looking at a very interesting concept. It is the idea of neo-reactionaries. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, you heard that right. And it's an actual thing. Would you believe it? So, first of all, let us just say, I hope you had a good weekend if you're listening to this. The weekend is a very sacred time on the calendar of the working class. It is the one time to which capital cannot touch us during the week, akin to, the Sabbath or a holy day throughout the week where people are not meant to do anything. We have the weekend here in the capitalist society, in the mode of production based on capital. We have the weekend so that we as humans may be able to kind of gather ourselves and enjoy this life before we're totally consumed by the force of capital. So, I hope you had a good weekend. And if you're still living the weekend because you're in a country or a place of the world that hasn't experienced Monday yet, I hope you're still enjoying it. And let me just tell you, the future is bright. And don't you forget it. Now, as I alluded to just a moment ago, we're going to be looking at this idea of neo-reaction. So who are the neo-reactionaries? What is neo-reactionism? I'm not going to lie to you, we're not going to get to the bottom of it today. I'm going to have all the answers. But it does appear to me to be the philosophy, the standpoint, the ideology of those who believe in the Dark Enlightenment. So if you joined us on our Friday stream, so last week, 4 days ago now, we went through and we uncovered the truth behind that which is known as dark matter. You may be aware of the phenomenon, but in the end of 2024, as part of the lead up to the presidential election, Elon Musk came out during one of the campaign rallies, I think it was in Madison Square Garden, and claimed himself to be dark gothic MAGA. And it left people scratching their heads as to what exactly he's referring to. The mainstream media have been very, very superficial in their understanding and their inquiry into what dark matter may be. It is not what they seem to suggest, which is like an aesthetic separation between traditional red matter, so the nationalistic tendencies of the MAGA movement, so inward focus on the American exceptionalism. It's not just like an aesthetic variation of that. It's separate altogether. I believe that the dark MAGA movement for someone like for someone like Elon Musk has got to do with the Dark Enlightenment. So these ideals of democracy has outlived its usefulness. It's really an anomaly. The idea that you could have a democratic system and for any sustained period of time, that is probably what the anomaly is, actually. And they think that it should be replaced. Now, the Dark Enlightenment says that it should be replaced by a monarchical structure, so an autocratic society, and not one that is harkens back to the days of when America was under the rule of Britain. No, a different type of monarchy, a monarchy for the modern age, a monarchy that is built upon the very structure of capitalism, I would say, one of the core institutional structures of capitalism, the company, the corporation, and that American society, and if not, society globally, should be run like a corporation. So you have a what they would refer to as a monarchical ruler. So a CEO, actually, to grab and use their terminology. They think that a CEO should be in charge of the country, and that CEO should have supreme control over that society, like a monarch would. They are the central figure, and they whatever they say goes. It's not to say that there aren't other levers of power underneath them. There aren't other stratifications underneath them, but like ultimately, if they get involved, their word goes on all things. Now, like a company though, and unlike I would say the monarchies of Europe in the Middle Ages, this type of monarchy, this startup culture, this corporate structure that should be implemented upon the human race, this monarch, this CEO figure that controls everything, is elected by a board, just like in a corporate structure. So you have shareholders that constitute the board, and the board elects the CEO to run in their interests, to organize society in their interests. So this is where you see this kind of society should be run like a monarchy again, but it's got capitalistic overtones, something that they don't really recognize, I would say, enough. If they don't see kind of the irony in like wanting to move away from these liberal structures, like the company structure is kind of like a liberal structure, you could say, and like they don't see the irony in the fact that if they run a monarchy, a society like a monarchy, but it's really just a reflection of a corporation, they're kind of upholding those liberal sentiments. As I said, Ollie Atlas is here, and welcome, Ollie Atlas. Thank you for doing the roll call, and hope you have enjoyed your weekend. If it is the weekend still for you, wherever you're joining us from, in whatever part of the US of A you are joining us from, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you were able to escape the clutches of capital. If you are indeed lucky enough to have secure employment in this very uncertain world and these very precarious times, I hope, yes, you were able to escape the clutches of capital over the weekend. And so, yes, we're going to be continuing in the vein of Friday, where we kind of dabbled in what the Dark Enlightenment was and how that influences Elon Musk in his choice to be dark, gothic MAGA kind of thing, to separate himself from the, more unsavory elements of online meme culture that first used the word dark MAGA to kind of just represent the vengeful and jingoistic side of the Make America Great Again movement. And like he separated, Elon Musk, that is, has separated himself by being all philosophical about it and referring to his dark MAGA as, yes, dark gothic MAGA. And that's, like I said, that's a nod to the Dark Enlightenment. And to get on to today's topic, neo-reactionaries are people that aspire to the tenets of the Dark Enlightenment. And as I was saying, the Dark Enlightenment is about not just, say, like a critique of liberal democracies and the democracies that we have in the modern age. It's revolutionary, really. It's about getting rid of them. They want to replace democracy with monarchies. And as I said, a corporate style of monarchy, not some, return to the Middle Ages or something like that, where we return to live off the land in a simple way and existence. This is actually all built around technology. One of the foremost philosophers of the Dark Enlightenment, although he's not the main, but he's definitely kind of an important figure and thinker in it, is a gentleman by the name of Nick Land. And, as we've discovered from our investigations on these streams, Nick Land is all about technology, and capital has the ability to revolutionize the means of production. That's a very Marxian idea, and Land's taken that to the next level and said, we should just like unleash the force of capital so it can, in this positive feedback loop kind of way, which is kind of what Marx describes capital anyway, but like, unfetter capitalism, completely unregulate it and dehumanize it and just let it just do its thing and unleash the fury on society. And then like it'll revolutionize the means of production, and that will bring about like kind of the end of capitalism as we know it. It's a revolutionary theory. And so, Dark Enlightenment thinkers and neo-reactionaries think that you could do this best, over like get out of this mode of production of capitalism almost by having a monarch sit above society. It's democratic institutions. It's this idea of progressivism politically that is holding us all back, holding the world back, holding the human race back from this technological outcome, which would, deliver us all from the banality of current human existence. So, this is this type of stuff that they're thinking. And like, we're going to get to the bottom of what neo-reactionaries are in today's stream. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that kind of means. So first of all, I guess let's get a definition. Let's go to our trusty companion, our research assistant, ChatGPT, for this one, which I have recently copped a little bit of heat for using, which is actually a little bit funny, might I say, to all of you out there. Recently, I did a video on Elon Musk's new city, Starbase, and like I did a clip from the stream and put it up as a video, and the video actually got quite a lot of views. I think it was a pretty topical piece, that's why. But like, yeah, the video got a lot of views, but like a lot of the commentary in there was like, oh, I can't believe you're using ChatGPT, like, blah, 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 like kind of thing. How could you use that? And like, this is brain dead content, and like, et cetera, et cetera. And like, you're right, 4AS. I think it was cheap excuses on the part of Musk lovers. And there was definitely that sentiment. Like, it was just like, oh, you didn't even research this, like kind of thing. You're just using ChatGPT. How this is awful content, kind of thing. And like, I think people were just upset that like someone was criticizing the actions of their beloved Elon Musk, and like that made them all very uncomfortable. And so they didn't want to be a part of that, which I thought was interesting nonetheless. And like what exemplified, I think, your theory there for AS is the fact that they had no actual criticism of what was being discussed and what ChatGPT had brought up. They weren't saying, oh my God, this is so wrong, here's why, like kind of thing. They were just like, you can't use ChatGPT to make content. Who does that? And it's just like, well, welcome to the 21st century. This is, 2025. And like, if you think that people don't use large language models to assist them with their day-to-day, then what what Stone Age existence are you living in, my friend? Being mad at someone using AI when they fanboy for an AI tech billionaire. That's a really good point. Eh? The contradiction is ripe there, Ollie Atlas. It is ripe for the picking. And I'm glad you reached out and you picked it, because I wish I'd thought of that one. That's pretty funny. It was like the guy who was trying to argue with me in the comments who didn't understand what constituted an argument. Was this in the same video? I haven't seen you getting in there and arguing. It was straight out of a Monty Python skit. Was this in that video, in the Starbase one? Or is this another video that you're arguing about? No, it was in a short. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Because I got in there and I was debating some people in the comments of this one. Because like, it's entertaining. And like, it's good just to like pick up, like check some of these people sometimes. Because they think that like, whatever they regurgitate, whatever they spew out of their mouths is the goddamn truth and nothing but the truth. But like, the truth is relative, as I like to say. And like, it's good for them to get a taste of reality from time to time. But yeah, funny stuff. Funny stuff. nonetheless. So, look, I want to get an understanding from our research assistant. And, like, she can be wrong, but, like, we take her with all of her faults, like we would anyone else on the stream and part of our movement. We don't judge. We just, expect people to own up to their mistakes and try to correct them where they can. So, my main point to him was, you've given me nothing to work with. It's just straight conjecture. Yeah, and like there was a lot of that stuff going on in the comment section for the Starbase one. It was just like, how could you? Like, how could you use this? And like, but like, you're not saying it's wrong though. So like, what are you offended by? I don't have a grasp on logical fallacies. Boreas does. He's quite the philosophical debate bro, and he will gladly explain that one to you, I'm sure. All good. I've spent years studying philosophy, and he's well armored for that, equipped for that sort of stuff. So let's just ask really simple stuff here, and then we'll, go back and forth. And you tell me if you want to ask anything. Good morning. Could you please give me a definition of what a neo-reactionary is, or who neo-reactionaries are? A neo-reactionary or neo-reactionary, without the hyphen apparently. Can you guys see that? Yeah, you can. Is part of a loosely defined political movement known as neo-reactionary movement, or NR small x. I was wondering, because I've actually seen that before. I was wondering where that comes from. They could NR neo-reactionaries, which emerged in the 2000s and 2010s, especially in tech and online circles. Now, you're probably wondering why we're looking at this stuff. If you are wondering, yo, what's up? Give up, Dwayne Johnson. Very good. I see what you did there, and I appreciate it. Actually, my question to you, good sir, is how long have you been cooking that one up for? Right? Sup, fam? Does pun? You're welcome. Yeah, how long have you been cooking up that one for? Because we all know that Dwayne Johnson loves a bit of cooking. So it'd be nice to know. I just thought of it on the way home to join the stream. Good. Well, I'm glad your brain was in action as you were making your way to the stream. You're getting your head in the game. I like it. Well, if you're wondering what we're doing today, Jag, in this stream, we are going to be trying to get our heads around what neo-reactionaries are, or who neo-reactionaries are. And like, I think we're across this anyway. We just haven't been using this terminology. So it does appear that, like, neo-reactionaries are the type of people, so like your Curtis Yarvins of the world, the philosophical backdrop behind the tech bros and their challenge for a global ascendancy, and not just an economic sense, but a truly political sense. And so we've got a term for them. And if you want a sick term, one that you could, get tattooed on yourself somewhere, another name for the neo-reactionaries is NRX. So that's like capital NR and then lowercase x. It's fucking hardcore. I wish we had something as cool as that to name our movement. But I'm sure something will pop up one day. Now, neo-reactionaries are deeply critical of modern liberal democracy, egalitarianism, and progressive values. I think that's a really good point to make. They hate progressive values or the idea of progressivism. They believe that progressivism is like everything that has developed out of the Enlightenment, so that period of time and that thinking that came out of the bourgeois kind of revolution. And they think it's all about progressivism. So, you know, moving in a leftwards trajectory, if you're looking at a political spectrum, they think it's everything like associated with leftist thinking. And they believe that the Enlightenment was fully structured around in progressivist thinking and progressive values, and everybody is indoctrinated because of the Enlightenment to think that the natural progression of history is through the idea of progressivism. And the Dark Enlightenment, you know, kind of blocks out the light from the Enlightenment and throws shade on that by challenging it at this core, this progressive core, and saying, no, it's not progressive ism that is what is important. There was something that was lost during the Enlightenment, that is the ideas of anti-progressivism, is, if you could call it that, the antithesis of being progressive, and the Dark Enlightenment is all about that. And it would appear that, yeah, these neo-reactionaries are another synonym for the Dark Enlightenment and anything that's opposing progressivism. Get NRX tattooed behind your left ear. That's a good one. There's that, like, because they love irony. Can I just say, these online types, these online philosophers. So, you know, that would be a nice little delicious piece of irony for those fuckers. They would love that. Hey, it's on the left side. No, why'd you put it there? Haha, I see. They advocate for a return to older forms of government and social hierarchy, often favoring monarchy, authoritarianism, or technocratic rule. Wrong. So, like, you know, just for the people out there that may be wondering if we ever push back on ChatGPT, we do. ChatGPT is wrong. Technocratic rule has got nothing to do with monarchy, authoritarianism, and anti-liberalism. It is something else altogether. I think what they're talking about here, or what ChatGPT means to say, is tech authoritarianism. So like techno-feudalism kind of thing. Believing these are more stable and efficient than democratic systems. So monarchy, authoritarianism. So they do believe, neo-reactionaries, that, yeah, democratic systems are just not the way to go. They're like an excess of society. When society hits a certain level of affluence and wealth, it can, like, you know, award itself a bit of democracy in a political sense for a little bit. But like, if it really wants to be efficient, it should go back to some type of authoritarian, autocratic style, and get rid of this, you know, this democracy stuff. You know, do away with that shit. Musk isn't salivating, though, because X isn't the first letter of the acronym. Yeah, and it's a little one, too. Little one. Poor little Musk. Did you know Elon uses child labor in countries like the Congo with less strict policies on business? You know, I'm not surprised at that. And there's probably a lot of kind of capitalists that are in on the game in areas of, you know, the developing world, let's call it, that, like, you know, use important or have important resources that are, you know, required to fuel the green revolution, let's call it. And, like, you know, they get these resources mined in like horrific conditions. And yes, I've heard of some of the tragedies that come out of the Congo, and like there is a bit of disruption going on in that area. Not that it's not usually pretty unstable, and like some of the supply lines for the key resources that come out of the Congo are under threat at the moment. So, you know, over the next couple of years, you might see some American intervention on that front, and then the Americans might decide to bring some freedom to the Congo, because I think those supply lines are being blocked because of what is happening in other places in the surrounds, and like they can't get their cheap resources straight out of the Congo anymore. So yes, once those supply lines are interrupted because of political instability, you watch, yeah, especially the Americans trying to bring some freedom and some democracy to the Congo, so they can continue to benefit off, you know, slave labor and child labor. Now, isn't that interesting actually that you bring that up? Because like some of the, like part of the theory that's been mulling over in my head a lot, because like a lot of the time I speak like really generally and in overarching statements about like, you know, the end of capitalism as we know it kind of thing, and like, you know, into techno-feudalism and all this sort of stuff. And I'm, you know, speaking about being an advanced country and like, you know, we don't have a solid working class anymore that's producing all the values. A lot of it's done by machines. And so like you have different parts of the working class now that aren't really associated with the value production, so they're doing other things. And yeah, as we accelerate and get more dependent on technology, the labor power relation in capitalism will diminish more and more and more. But you know, it's a really privileged advanced country kind of perspective on things, because if you look at places like, you know, India and Southeast Asia and Africa and stuff like that, like there's still a lot of people that are involved in just straight out wage labor relations. And like it's just them using, you know, very rudimentary tools and technology, doing resource extraction or producing clothes or putting in assembly lines, putting technology together that just gets shipped around the world's markets and stuff like that. So like, as much as like a lot of this analysis about techno-feudalism that we've been doing, surveillance capitalism and tech authoritarianism and all that sort of stuff, it's true in the advanced countries that we live in, and the little worlds that we live in, the bubbles that we live in. There is still a lot of wage laborers out there. So capitalism is alive and strong, and the capitalist relations are alive and strong. It's just that they're on the peripheries of the empire, the capitalist empire. They are outside of the imperial core, as some Marxists and socialists and communists and stuff will describe it as. And so like, just because it's like out of sight doesn't mean we should keep it out of mind. And I have to admit that I do fall susceptible to that tendency a lot. And like, I forget that there are, you know, there's real people out there all the time that are like actually producing value in a capitalistic relation, like surplus value. They're trading their labor for like nothing, like minuscule. And it's like, and it's not just like adults we're talking about, as Ollie Atlas rightly points out, it's children a lot of the time around the world where there are no labor laws, there are no big state bodies that can protect their labor forces and their own people. And we, you know, I think we should never forget that while techno-feudalism is a thing, and, you know, surveillance capitalism is a thing, and we're accelerating further and further towards the AI revolution, and we're all going to be displaced, that we may be displaced in advanced countries, but there's still a lot of workers around the world that produce all the value that we all survive off, and they're being exploited shamelessly and with imaginable cruelty, because I think we all know enough about the cruelty of the capitalist system when it is completely unregulated and is able to do whatever it wants with working class people. It divulges into things that are akin to, you know, the worst parts of slave societies, which is what Ollie Atlas is describing there. So I just want to draw attention to that, because I think it's remiss of us to forget about that in advanced industrial nations. But yes, let's get back to neo-reactionaries, shall we? So the idea of neo-reactionaries, the key idea of neo-reactionaries include anti-democracy. They see democracy as chaotic, inefficient, and driven by irrational masses. Like, this is not new, okay, this sort of stuff. It's really funny, actually, because in my opinion, it was the early liberals. So like, they're critiquing liberal democratic society, but like the classical liberals that put it together, like the founding fathers in America and like the revolutionaries of France, you know, when they were like developing their societies, they purposely built it in a way where like the average mob couldn't be in on the democratic process. They limited it just to people who had money, just to people who had property, or just to people that were, you know, involved in the economy somehow. So maybe they had enough of an income to pay taxes, or they had enough property to qualify for land taxes, what have you. They were demonstrating that they were part of the economy, and so their opinion and their decision-making process, or their decisions, were important to the functioning and the running of the economy. And so they were allowed to be part of the bourgeois democratic system, liberal democratic system. And so like these neo-reactionaries who hate liberal democracy, and they're coming up with ideas of like, you know, democracy being driven by irrational masses. That's exactly what liberals hated, like classical liberals hated about democracy. And they were scared of it because, like, I think one of the founding fathers, I can't remember who, but like he basically said that like if average people ever got a hold of the democratic system and they were, you know, switched on, they were conscious enough, then they would just use their power as the masses to vote to take all of the wealth and the power of the people that have all the wealth and the power, and they just redistribute it amongst themselves. That's what a logical bigger group of society should do in that situation. And so they thought that democracy was really dangerous. And so these neo-reactionaries, you know, they're not inventing anything here. They're just regurgitating old ideas about democracy. But I digress. Let's continue with what they've got on the list here. Hierarchy and order. They embrace rigid hierarchies, racial, gendered, economic, as natural or necessary. Yeah, it's actually interesting. Like, I've picked up on this theme that's running through the Dark Enlightenment at the moment. That is like one of these progressive values that I was talking about before that kind of holds the world together at the moment, or one of the core progressive values in a capitalist system. So as capitalism goes around the world, right, you know, destroying all the barriers and incorporating everything into the market, it goes around destroying cultures, destroying traditions to bring everyone into the market system. And as it destroys more and more and brings more and more people into the fold that weren't there before, what it's doing is it's breaking down the elements that separated different cultures. And so as part of the progressive creed that holds together a liberal democratic society, and it's like its tendency towards being on the left here, is this idea that you can't touch race. Okay, and so one of the ideas that these Dark Enlightenment or these neo-reactionaries have is that like race is the ultimate taboo in a liberal democratic society, in a progressive minded society. And it's so taboo that, like, not only can you not be racist because you have to be all multicultural and stuff, because capitalism has broken down all the barriers and like it's turning everyone into one big global community now, and it's destroying all the traditions and that separates everyone culturally. So we got this one big blended together culture. As capitalism kind of breaks all that down, it needs us to not really be racist anymore. So they think that, you know, being anti-racist is actually this big progressive thing that holds the world together. And like an example they use is that science, they believe, okay, science has shown that there are differences between races. Like there are biological differences between certain cultures that have existed around the world. So potentially between like indigenous cultures in certain areas and like, you know, Europeans and like Africans and Europeans and Caucasians and non-Caucasians. And they believe that, like, you know, this is scientific. They believe that this stuff is real, but because the progressive ideal that holds this world together is that, you know, you can't actually be racist and you can't make distinctions between humans. Like we're all just one big conglomeration of Homo sapiens sapien, that science is subordinate to this kind of progressive mindset. And so like if science is being, you know, subdued and dominated by the ideas of progressivism, which is like race, you can't touch it, and any scientific theory that tries to develop, which actually, is in contradistinction to that and says, no, there might be differences between different races and stuff like that on scientific grounds. That sort of stuff is just like, thrown out the window as evil and is eradicated from like any type of conversation. And so like that type of stuff, this liberal democracy, which has its founding in progressive values, is why it's inefficient and why it's chaotic and it's irrational. And like it needs to be dispelled, because like in a monarchical system or an autocratic system, like people wouldn't worry about that. They'd put their faith in the science and not get caught up in the progressive, the political correct progressive discourse and way of thinking. So that's an argument that they have, which I think is very interesting. And like, I would like to know what your opinion is on that, because it's very controversial. Because yes, most people would kind of turn their nose up to this type of, Darwinism type of stuff, where you can like, I don't know, measure someone's skull or something like that and decide how big their cranium is, and that depicts whether they're, a higher order human than some other one who has a different shaped skull or something like that. And like these people are like, well, this is just scientific kind of thing. And this is one of the examples that like liberal democratic societies are progressive. And that means, generally on the left of the spectrum. And because they're naturally in this way, they make themselves redundant. So it's a very hardcore theory, this stuff. And like, they want to break down all of that progressivist logic. Critique of Enlightenment values. They reject liberal ideals like universal equality and individual rights as flawed. Interesting. Universal equality. The idea of social Darwinism concerning race was proven wrong ages ago. Look, I'm not arguing that, but what I'm saying is they are, and they would say that it's only been proven wrong, and then everyone's gone along with that narrative that it's been proven wrong because the progressives control the Overton window. And so the Overton window is something that I've learned from 4IS, and like it just comes up everywhere. But the Overton window is like where the acceptable conversation is. And the Overton window is like, here are the parameters, and like any ideas that are outside of this acceptable window of conversation are completely taboo. They're outrageous, they're radical, and should not be accepted. Like, Nazis saying that like Jews should be exterminated, or like the Aryan race is perfect and everyone else should be destroyed. Like those things, those types of conversations are outside the Overton window, and you can't talk about that type of stuff. It's just way too extreme, and should not be tolerated. And so, they believe that you can't have that conversation at all because of this progressive mindset that rules over society. And that's why they're reacting to it. Okay, they're reactionaries, I guess. And they present no evidence for it being true, despite their claims. And that's the thing, I don't know if they provide any evidence, but what they're talking about philosophically is how you can't even have that conversation. Because like the meta-narrative, like on a societal wide scale, across all liberal democratic societies, is like, this is nonsense. It's been proven wrong a long time ago. We can never revisit it ever again. We can never touch this ever again. And so that is their critique of modern society, that like the progressivist mindset, the woke mind virus has taken over everyone, and this is just another development. This is an example of it. And so like they reject ideas of universal equality and individual rights as flawed. So universal equality, like this goes again to like kind of the social Darwinism stuff, which is like, is everyone equal? And like this, like the idea that, like in the American Constitution, when they talk about that idea that like we take these things to be self-evident, that, and like they talk about like there being kind of inalienable rights to all men, and women, of course, but like, all people, let's say, like these universal rights that everyone has, because it's founded on like this idea that everyone's universally equal. They think that that is progressivist nonsense as well, and not everyone's equal, and like inalienable rights are a stupid idea. Like, who said there that we should take these things to be self-evident. It's completely irrational, they think. Irrational to think that if something is self-evident. Like, what is self-evident? What does that even mean? Like, does something come with evidence for its own existence? And like, just having that as a standpoint and using that to base its entire society on is outrageous. They believe. How cancel culture works depending on what ideology controls the culture. Yeah, it's an interesting point, actually. Yeah, cancel culture is pervasive throughout humanity, throughout human history. It just depends on who's controlling the conversation. And they would say, these neo-reactionaries, that is the progressives that control the conversation. Techno-elitism. Here we go. This is an interesting one. So many NRX thinkers, NRX thinkers, e.g. Curtis Yarvin, aka Mencius Moldbug, come from tech backgrounds and propose governance by CEO like sovereign, by an elite CEO like sovereign or ruling class. I think that is really a really important thing to keep in mind when considering neo-reactionaries or the Dark Enlightenment, that this is very closely associated with the digital era. So I'm not going to just say like with tech bros and tech culture and stuff like that, or Silicon Valley. I'm just going to say this is developed in the digital era. So it's in response to the forces of production. Hey, let's use some Marxist terminology here. Like the forces of production in this age, in the 21st century, is like, high and advanced telecommunications technology. So the information technologies and like existing on this digital space and within this like alternate reality almost has helped develop these ideas of neo-reactionism. And it's closely associated then, yes, with tech culture, and specifically the type of tech culture that you get coming out of places like Silicon Valley. Curtis Yarvin being a great example. And like Curtis Yarvin is like the god. Like I thought he was just like this fringe thinker, but like he is like the god of like this Dark Enlightenment and neo-reactionary culture. Like I've tried to like investigate this, and like everyone is referencing him. Everyone that like talks about this and considers themselves to be part of the Dark Enlightenment or a neo-reactionary and stuff like that, like they keep referring to Mencius Moldbug. Like even Nick Land, and I thought he was a pretty standalone philosopher who had a name for himself kind of thing, and like he references Mencius Moldbug all the time. And so like he seems to be, Curtis Yarvin, an absolute heavyweight, if not like the ideological starting point for a neo-reactionary movement. Like he is the guy, ye old Curtis Yarvin, our mate Curtis Yarvin. And like, we've heard him speak a few times, and he's pretty like, pretty outrageous, and he goes off on some crazy tangents. Remember that time we were watching with those like two people that have the crazy thick glasses on, these American conservatives? So I don't know. We're trying to ask him about Marx, and we were looking for like Yarvin's critique on Marx, and they asked him a question about Marx, and he literally like for 10 minutes spoke about like nothing to do with Marx at all. Like he's a bit fucking mental, let's be honest. And like he's the guy. He's the main thinker in all of this stuff, in neo-reactionary movements and within the Dark Enlightenment. Pretty crazy to think about. Not the social Darwinism point, but after reading the beginning of The Dawn of Everything, I can see the point they are trying to make about how hard it is to establish the concept of equality. They are using the point for nefarious ends, but it's an interesting point nonetheless. How hard it is to establish the concept of equality. Yeah, and like I think David Graeber does a really, really interesting job of like talking about the derivations of it, because like it is actually a concept. If you go off what David Graeber is saying, obviously for us, like the idea of equality is a concept that's alien to the European mindset. And I say the European mindset as in something that is, across the Atlantic. So basically a Western idea. Like equality was not really seen like that. Like the Western society has not really ever existed in a sense in some type of, I guess, symbiosis with the idea of equality. There's always been stratification, and there's always been an understanding of like some people are literally just lesser humans than others. And so, like, being able to get people to see the idea of equality was like, absolutely groundbreaking and revolutionary. And what these guys are trying to do is kind of undermine that and take it back to like, pre Enlightenment thinking. They're trying to take it all away. He's scathing of Rousseau and how he established the stupid savage. Huh. Yeah, an abstraction of equal primitive societies. And like, yeah, all these noble savages that like kind of just live in these like kind of wonderful existences, and life was just so much easier and simple for them. Like, whoa, at Jag. I can't tell if I was censored or not, Elias. Are you getting censored? Oh, because I can't even see anything coming up. I don't see it I can't see anything on my end. You were, yeah. Put it in Discord. Yeah, I can't even see anything coming up on my end, to be honest. And yeah, I would like to know everyone's opinions on this, because this is fucking mental, like what these neo-reactionaries are talking about. Like, they're really questioning like the fundamentals of our existence here in the modern world, which is like, attacking equality, attacking like the ideas of that humans could be basically different scientifically. And like this, it's true. Like, you can't talk about this stuff. You cannot talk about it, like, especially after what happened in World War II, and like with the Nazis and all that sort of stuff. There's literal social engineering, as well as, trying to separate themselves as a supreme race, etc., etc. Like, you cannot talk about this type of stuff. You cannot have that conversation. And like, they're knocking down. And this is why I think, like, Curtis Yarvin has become so influential, and why he loves irony so much, because he can talk about this sort of stuff. Like, quoting, and this is, Curtis Yarvin, and like someone like Gil Durant and all the liberals out there, I don't mean liberals with a small L, like, hate Curtis Yarvin so much because he can say things like, oh, we're going to have to figure out what to do with people when technology like AI makes everyone's labor redundant. We're going to have to figure out how to turn people into biofuel some way, because that's the only like purpose we're going to have for all of these people that are like left over. LOL, it was so dumb, but I put it in the CC. All right, I'll have a look. But like, he can say stuff like that. Like, we're going to have to start figuring out like a humane way of organizing genocide. And like, we need kind of, to figure out how to use humans as biofuel as a result of that. And then he can like, laugh it off as him being ironic. And so like, irony is a big part of their dogma or their way of looking at the world, but I think it's just a shield to deflect against some of this pretty outrageous thinking, I think. Despite the fact that, we've got Pious Jackpot saying stuff in here. I've missed a couple of things, is that right? Pious Jackpot says, despite the fact that punk and goth culture is meant to be rebellious, but the right wing is inherently backwards or conformist. Must be, sorry I missed this, but it must have been in relation to when I was talking about Dark Matter. Jag says, all I said was fake drinking their dirt beer and then fake drinking their toilet water cerveza in response for the goofy couple that, Yodi Carvin interviewed. I don't get why either was censored. Yeah, that's not even that bad. But yeah, the that couple with the glasses, oh my God. And remember how he was drinking his beer? God, it's so good. Do that seriously get sentenced? LOL, YouTube is joke sometimes. Yeah, like this is, and like this is what they're talking about, okay? So like if you were a neo-reactionary right now, we were getting sentenced, you'd be like, see, all this progressive bullshit with like, this kind of idea of like there's a supreme taboo that no one touches, which is race in a progressive liberal democratic society, and like everything spans off that. So like you have all your identity politics have like refract off that as a result, and now you can't say anything, like you can't have a real conversation about anything because there is this idea of when you become ultimately tolerant, you become tolerant of all things, right? Of all races and all people, and everyone's equal and all that sort of stuff. You become so tolerant that intolerance is not tolerated, kind of thing. So like it's like that South Park joke, like when they go to the tolerance museum. Oh no, no, they have tolerance camps, and like they make the Nazi joke kind of thing. It's just like here, tolerance will not be intolerance will not be tolerated, like kind of thing. That's their argument. Their argument is like progressivism is self-defeating in the sense that like it tries to be so tolerant that it becomes the ultimate form of intolerance and starts censoring everything and like stopping people from being able to express themselves. So neo-reactions, I'll just finish off what ChatGPT has said here. Neo-reactionaries are often overlap with or influence part of the alt-right, though not all alt-right figures are explicitly NRX. Their influence can be found in certain online communities, Silicon Valley adjacent thinkers, and segments of Dark Enlightenment discourse. I just don't understand why the lactose intolerant get a free pass. This is why we need Jerry Poppins in here. It's not the humor. It's not just the humor. It's like the alternative opinion on all this sort of stuff. It's a fucking good point. Like some forms of intolerance are acceptable, but like if you wanted to take all of this to this logical conclusion, it's extreme, then like we should eradicate the lactose intolerant. Like that's the logical extreme of this idea of progressivism, is like we're gonna have to do something about these lactose intolerant people. They need to be dealt with, if you know what I mean. So if you know anyone, let us know and we'll take them away in the middle of the night. It's a good point. Now we're talking. And that's the logical conclusion of, yes, wokeism is like they're coming for the lactose intolerant. Watch out. They're going to get you. They're going to get you. Little wokies in their rainbow flags t-shirts or something. And their blue hair. They're coming to get you. So let's just see. I would like to know, this is just me personally, unless anyone else has any questions for ChatGPT. What works are in the neo-reactionary or Dark Enlightenment canon? Okay, here we go. Unqualified Reservations by Mencius Moldbug, the founding father of the neo-reactionaries. Nick Land, the philosopher of accelerationism. I thought so. But there's other ones that I've heard of. Carl Schmitt, The Concept of the Political. James Burnham, the Managerial Revolution. I think I've heard of that. Julius Evola, Revolt Against the Modern World. Thomas Carlyle. Now, Thomas Carlyle, I think, is the person who was the first to describe the French Revolution, or a section of the French Revolution, as the Reign of Terror. So when they had the Reign of Terror, when they were going in, like chopping off everyone's heads and like attacking each other and calling someone like, anti-revolutionary or reactionary and stuff like that, and like killing them for crimes against the revolution, Thomas Carlyle was the first person to ever use and describe this period as the Reign of Terror. And like, because before that, it was just part of the French Revolution. It was just like, yes, this is what happened. They descended into this crazed, bloodthirsty environment where like they were killing people for being enemies of the revolution. But like, like now we all have a word for that period and we call it the Reign of Terror. And it's supposed to be people that were opposed to the French Revolution wanted to put a term on it so they could scare people away from the idea of revolution. So they were just like, see, if you want to have a revolution, look what happens. Like, there'll be a period where people just go around chopping each other's heads off. And like, they're going to get the guillotine out and like no one's safe because it's a reign of terror. It's just about causing terror in society. And I'm pretty sure Thomas Carlyle is that guy. That's interesting. So these must be old thinkers as well. Techno-libertarian and elitist thinkers. Hans Hermann Hope, Democracy, the God That Failed. A libertarian critique of democracy favoring monarchy. How is that libertarian? Can someone tell me how libertarianism goes down with monarchy? Like, it's supposed to be, libertarian is supposed to be about like being free, free to do what Peter Thiel, oh my God. Well, not explicitly neo-reactionary. His skepticism of democracy, interest in seasteading, and support for Yarvin connect him with the ecosystem. Online cultural neo-reactionaries. Blogs and forums. Xenosystems, more right, social matter, and subreddits like Dark Enlightenment now banned. Whoa. Oh, wait. Maybe that's just the name of the subreddit or the Reddit. Has anyone heard of these online things like Xenosystems, more right, or anything like that? Yes, welcome, Xanthos Philon. Monarchism is dependent on government control, which libertarian opposes. It doesn't make sense. It feels weird, this idea that you can have libertarians that are like down with the monarchy and stuff like that. It seems antithetical. This is why ANCAPs live off contradictions. Well, no, I think that means it has been banned from Reddit. So it has been banned from Reddit. Wow. See, and this would just like feed these guys to no end, right? They'd be like, look, we've been banned from Reddit. And like Reddit can be like this really disgusting kind of orgiastic place where like dark thoughts and discussions happen. And like these guys, these Dark Enlightenment people have been banned on Reddit. Like that's saying something, isn't it? Like even Reddit's just like, not touching that one. No, thank you. That's crazy. Then again, anarcho-monarchists, which is just so idealist. Summary of core themes. Democracy equals degeneracy. Whoa, hardcore. Enlightenment values equal flawed. Strong hierarchies and sovereigns, desirable. Governance should resemble a CEO-led corporation. Like, doesn't that just say enough? Like the governments behind the Dark Enlightenment and like these neo-reactionaries and stuff is just like, all right, let's just take capitalism to its actual extreme in terms of its social organization. Let's just have everything run like a fucking corporation. Like, let's just pull the veil back and stop pretending like we care about like a separation of powers or anything like that. It's like the opposite of like Marxism or like socialism. Like socialism is about bringing democracy to the economy that exists, particularly like supposedly exists in like, the political realm. So bringing it to the economic realm. And like, this is the opposite. This is the opposite of like socialism in the sense that it's just like, okay, like democracy exists in the political realm and like we have monarchies in the corporate structure. We should bring the corporate structure into the political realm. Like that's why it's reactionary kind of thing, because it's reacting to like Marxism. And that's why like these people try as they can, try as hard as they can never like escape their ties to like the Marxist critique of capitalism. They're just all offshoots of like Marxism. And that's why it's so important to have your head around Marxism, I think, because like all of these people, they as much as they claim to be like original and they think they've figured it out, like they're just really working off a lot of his groundwork on capitalism. Technology, not inherently liberating, may hasten the collapse of liberalism. That's what I think accelerationism is all about, to be honest. Looks like ChatGPT might be wrong, or it was only temporary. The Dark Enlightenment. There we go. Oh, ChatGPT has been fact checked. Thank you, Jag. I don't know if you were there when we started, but like I was saying, I was getting done. I was getting cooked hard in the comments section on a video that I did on Starbase, about Elon Musk's Starbase, and like there were lots of people in the comments who were just like, oh, I can't believe you're using ChatGPT to make your content, like kind of thing. Because like I was reading out like the process of how Starbase got formulated under Texan law, and like they were just like ChatGPT is always wrong or something like that. And I'm just like, okay, calm down. You haven't actually said why you disagree with ChatGPT. You just don't like me using it. So Dark Enlightenment thread is still going on Reddit. Oh, you want to check it out? Is that why you put it in censored? Hey, should we do it? Should we check it out? I don't know. I don't know, man. Reddit. I don't know if I can do this. Yeah, we're on Reddit, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are. I have returned. The Dark Enlightenment. How many people has it got? 25k members. That's all right. That's pretty good. 6 online. Watch out. I found out that Curtis is keynoting at LC in Estes Park next month. And you can attend a dinner with him with a VIP ticket. Not interested in tech, but going to meet him. Anyone else up for it? Damn. Anyone? Anyone want to meet Curtis Yarvin? What about you Americans? It's going to be at the LC, wherever the fuck that is. Okay, so let's just figure out what are they here for. A place to discuss the terrible state of the modern world that has resulted from the progressive religion of egalitarianism. See, it's a religion. Topics: Dark Enlightenment, neo-reaction, mold bug. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Isn't it interesting, eh? That like as deplorable as they think the progressive religion is, they just can't escape it themselves. It's a good contradiction. Roundtable meetups meet other monarchists in real life. Is this like a dating site as well? This is crazy. I've been working on for the past months. Those of you who follow TMC might already know that I'm talking about. The monarchist community is often characterized as terminally online, as full of LARPers who talk a lot and do nothing, whose worldview is entirely based on paradox games, who seek to aggrandize themselves with fake honors and titles, who often have very unusual interests outside monarchies. Wow, they're bringing the monarchy to the real world. This is crazy. A spade crab? Yeah, what the fuck is that? That's a really good question, actually. Maybe they are low-key admitting that they all have crabs. No thanks. Explains the guy. You don't want to go on Reddit? Too late, Mr. Poppins. They call something a religion or cult just because they oppose said movement or faction. Solid tax breaks too. So basically the right. Anyway. Oh, look at these people. He's critiquing it. Watch out. All right, that's enough. We had a look. We came, we saw, we left. That's all we wanted to do. It exists, and ChatGPT was wrong. That's a bad ChatGPT. Naughty, bad ChatGPT. Shall we talk to ChatGPT about that, actually? Let's do that. Hashtag accelerate. Where was it that it brought that up? Are you sure it's banned? Question mark. If not, what do you have to say for yourself? So it was banned by Reddit for violating site-wide policies, particularly those related to hate speech and harassment. And I wonder why. This occurred during a broader crackdown on extremist or politically radical communities. That said, Reddit has a history of banning and then seeing similar communities reappear under different names or migrate them to platforms like Ruckus and Lemmy or niche Discord servers. If Dark Enlightenment is somehow not banned or has been reinstated, then I stand corrected, and that would be a recent development worth noting. In that case, I'd say what I have to say for myself is good catch, and I appreciate the precision. Good catch, Jag. It's important to be accurate when discussing controversial ideological spaces, especially ones that shift and adapt online. Yes, they do adapt, don't they? Eh? ChatGPT was wrong because the British woman avatar didn't speak about it in real time. Yeah, interesting. All right, so that's what neo-reactionaries are all about. It's like it's completely intertwined with the Dark Enlightenment. Mencius Moldbug, our friend Curtis Yarvin seems to be very, very instrumental in all of this. He seems to be basically like, what did ChatGPT refer to? He's the founding father of the neo-reactionaries. Now, what is reactionary? Or what is being reactionary anyhow? Has anyone ever really contemplated that? Because like revolutionaries and leftists, I would say leftists primarily, like to call anyone on the right side of, I guess, the political spectrum as reactionaries. And so like I'm assuming, and this is my thoughts on all of this, is that because the left has traditionally been integrated with revolutionary culture, wanting to revolutionize capitalism, that was like the raison d'etre of most leftist causes. So all your socialist causes, or your Marxists, or your communists, or your anarchists, all of that, like they wanted to revolutionize, they wanted to change capitalism. And so like the obvious opposition to that is any reaction to the revolutionary cause. And so reactionaries, I believe, are anyone, and they're usually associated with the right because the right wing is conservative. They want to conserve the position. They want to stay in place or pull it backwards. The revolutionary kind of sentiment has been associated with progressivism. And so like in reaction to progressivism and revolutionary appeal, you have reactionary movements and stuff like that. So my take on reactionaryism or being reactionary is something that is just antithetical to the idea of being revolutionary. Nafan, the question is reacting to what? To change, my dear boy. They are conservatives. Okay, so it's reacting to change. And so that's what inherently makes a reactionary. So then a neo-reactionary, you got to ask, is like, what are they up to then? If they are a new form of reactionary, they're reacting to the status quo, they would argue. So that makes them revolutionaries. So this is like inception shit now. Because like they are no longer reactionaries in the old sense, which is railing against progressivism and change, because how they see it is change is the status quo. Like progressivism, this cult, this religion of progressivism is the status quo. The woke mind virus is the status quo. And so they are reacting against the status quo. They're neo-reactionaries, and they're somewhat revolutionary now. And this is why I think there's an important distinction to make, because I would say that reactionaries are oppositional more to revolution than just change for the sake of change. That's like there's a particular type of change in revolution. It's, I think, to be like changing the current system, the totality, bringing it forward, improving it, not just progressing it, but improving it. And so reactionaries pull against that kind of revolutionary trajectory. And so neo-reactionaries are kind of like oppositional in that sense, like, because they actually think that progress and revolution is a natural order in this system, and they're reacting against that. That makes them new, I guess. 4AS, I love how one of the neo-reactionary names sounds like they are the devil straight out of Tenacious D's The Pick of Destiny. The Atlas, reaction is the step past just being conservative. Okay, so like it's beyond that. Jerry Poppins, what is the Trump government? Conserving, haha. It's been the biggest change in US politics and policy since the beginning of all time and space. Yeah, look, they're definitely not conserving much in terms of, like, you know, the the federal bureaucracy and things like that. But they're definitely reacting to progressivism in terms of, you know, getting rid of DEI and making the claim via executive order that women are women. No, did he make that claim? No, he just said it in his inauguration. He said, you know, women are women and there's two genders or something like that, and that's it. So it's like all this kind of reaction to this progressive religious cult. Revolutionary doesn't just mean progress, though. A topple of a pyramid, so another group is on top, is far more common revolution throughout history. Interesting thought. But like, in order to maintain the status quo, you usually have a reactionary element to the revolutionary potential. And so that's why I would actually argue that reactionary culture is more antithetical to revolution than progressivism, whether or not you're just replacing it with another power structure or another pyramid scheme or something like that. It doesn't matter. It's reactionary to the revolutionary intent itself. I think that is actually a huge part here. They're conserving the white patriarchy, says Jag in the censored comments. I'm assuming that's in response to your comments, Jerry Poppins. Yeah, they're conserving the white patriarchy. Now, Nafan, let me give you a prime example of what I'm talking about, okay? I consider, and like, I will explain this if you want to, so don't be too offended, because I know some people in here will be offended by this. But the union movement or unionism in capitalism is a reactionary force. Let me just say it. Just say it right there. Just say it right there. I'm putting it out there. But like, being part of a union or having strong unions and a strong union culture in a society, in an advanced, developed society, is a reactionary force. That's a Rosa L point. Oh, interesting. Okay, because I've heard what's his name? I've read Lenin talk about this, and I don't think it's something that is well talked about in leftist circles and leftist ideology. The reaction is always to support your union, solidarity, etc., etc., support for the working class. But like these things, these 100%. Okay, so good. So like people are across this idea. So like reactionary doesn't just have to be like in the negative connotation or pejorative either. From a leftist perspective, you can have reaction to a revolutionary cause, and like the revolutionary action in capitalism is the constant revolution of the means of production, And so like the constant revolutionizing of the means of production is supposed to hurtle us towards a society where we can like kind of escape the clutches of capitalism itself. And so like if you constantly have union movements that are holding back the productive forces, then like you can argue that they're a reactionary force in society because they are antithetical to the revolutionary change that is like a feature of capitalism. Yeah, she said it was just a way to exist within the capitalist system. Um, that's a good point. It's part of that liberal kind of look on capitalism, which is always about humanizing capitalism. And like it's a very liberal notion, and that's a very progressive notion, I would argue. And so that's why I think there's a different trajectory between progressivism and revolution, because progressivism you can associate like the neo-reactionaries do. You can associate progressivism with just like this religious cult of that like kind of takes over capitalist society and pushes it in a certain progressive trajectory, because that progressive mindset helps capitalism keep smashing boundaries and keep on developing the means of production and keep on making technological changes and all that sort of stuff, because it's all in the name of progress, progress, progress. But like revolution pulls the entire system and makes like all of that sort of stuff, brings everything into question. And reaction, I think, is a response to like the revolutionary stuff as opposed to just the progressive stuff. That's my take on all of that. It's a way to mitigate the effects of capitalism. Unions tame capitalism, not smash or erode capitalism, as Eric Olin Wright would say. Yeah, totally. It's about the goals of those reactionary or revolutionary forces. Yeah. So what's the intent? Yeah, that's a really good point. Unions are an economically progressive step, but has progressed too slowly to efficiently overthrow the capitalist class within the workplace. That's an interesting point too, because like that was the intentional as well. Like if you look at like Marx's revolutionary theory, like he was encouraging people to get involved in unions and like political parties, so like a Labour Party or something like that, because that gave them political education. So like that it gave them political consciousness. It enabled them to express themselves in a political landscape where they might not have actually had the chance to educate themselves in that environment. And so like he wanted them to get involved in politics. And so you can do that as part of the economic struggle, which is the union movement, or the political struggle by forming a political party within the bourgeois system. And that would like, educate the masses on like how to think politically. But like it was never an end in itself. And like the establishment of institutionalized unions as actual organizations that negotiate economic policy on behalf of bourgeois systems is a reactionary force in the world, because it's holding back the capitalist system from developing in a way in which allows the end or the revolutionary movement to occur. It's all about the implication. Interesting. I thought that would be way more controversial, but it seems like everyone's kind of down with that perception that you can have reactionary forces, and like, reactionary forces can be things that are held quite dear to not only like, leftist thinking, but like, the working class movement generally, because people will defend unions like, to death. And so like it's hard to critique them. But like I think this is an interesting point here. This just shows you kind of the difference in certain types of thought and intellectual endeavor when you can see the nuance there. Like you can support unions as a leftist, but also see how they're a reactionary force in society as a revolutionary. I'm proud of the reading group. We're showing our intellectual capacity and robustness here. Have I missed something in the censored comments? No, I haven't. I am interested to know where that fucking crab comes from, though. That crab with the spade. What the hell does that mean? I wonder if I can actually take a shot of that and ask ChatGPT. See if she knows. You're right to challenge that. Let's see if I can do that. Do you know what symbol this is? It's the logo of the crab faction associated with the Dark Enlightenment or neo-reactionary circles online, particularly within certain right-wing or accelerationist subcultures. The crab icon, often stylized like this with glowing or metallic coloring, is an internal symbol like a spade or cathedral dome. It's kind of a meme sigil. It's used semi-ironically. They love their irony, or symbolically by people aligned with neo-reactionaries, anti-democratic elitism, or techno-reactionary thought. Sometimes it's referred to as the crab god, playing into the meme-based mythologies that neo-reactionaries and other esoteric right-wing movements build to signal in-group affiliation. It's worth noting the crabs is sometimes contrasted with the bug or locust, representing progressivism or the perceived swarm of egalitarian liberalism. That's hilarious. Google says the spade has a sexual connotation too. I think that may be associated with, unless you're pulling my leg, Jerry Poppins, but like this neo-reactionary stuff is supposed to be all associated with like incels and stuff like that. And like, you know, incels, celibacy, whether they like it or not, or whether they self-impose it or not. It's part of their thing. This kind of symbolism is often deliberately opaque or layered in irony to filter outsiders, common in movements that want to remain underground and cultivate a sense of exclusivity. They love irony because it leaves ambiguity that no one can challenge. Pull your leg. I would never. Yeah, that's an interesting point. The irony is just like, oh no, no, you know, like that's not what it means. Oh, you know, no, that's not how we interpret it. It's more like this, and then you can like hide within layers and layers and layers. They love the irony because it leaves ambiguity that no one can challenge. That's a fucking great point. I think you should add that to your little notebook, Jag, when you start writing. It's a good point. So they do all have crabs. Fair enough. So what did they say here? It's glowing metallic, like a spade. It's like a meme sigil. Used semi-ironically, people aligned with. What referred to as the crab god, playing to meme-based mythologies. Why a crab god? Can you explain this better? Why is this part of meme culture the crab god? What's the irony? We're getting into like deep speculation and hallucination territory here. If it doesn't have an answer, it's just going to make one up. So let's just be cognizant of that. Kind of a reactionary meme to progress, to be contrasted with a bug or an insectoid swarms. Sideways movement. Progressives move forward. The crab moves sideways, suggesting deviation or resistance to linear progress. The crab as a symbol in this context began as a kind of reactionary meme to progress. Okay, so it moves sideways. Hard shell represents hierarchy, boundaries, formality, in contrast to the soft swarm-like nature of bugmen or liberal consumers. Wow. Detached irony and apathy. Crabs are cold, armored, and indifferent, a metaphor for reactionary detachment and disdain. The crab god emerges as a tongue-in-cheek deity in this meme cosmology, a stand-in for order, hierarchy, detachment from mass politics, and even accelerationist nihilism. He is not worshipped in a religious sense, but rather invoked in memes as a kind of mythic symbol of elite rule and anti-modernity. This becomes especially prominent in spaces like obscure Discord servers and 4chan adjacent circles. The irony layer, post-irony, what is that? Esotericism. Far out. In many of these circles say things half seriously, half mockingly, claiming loyalty to the crab god signals shared in-group knowledge while allowing plausible deniability. I'm just memeing. Weaponized aesthetics. It's intentionally absurd and surreal. A reaction against sincerity. It's inaccessible to normies. The broader esoteric right strategy, subversion of seriousness, while criticizing modern values and democracy in a dead serious tone. They wrap it in jokes, memes, or mythical creatures. The crab god meme functions like a secular religious symbol, much like Pepe the Frog did. Okay. I still don't really understand it fully though. Why it's ironic then if it's a symbol of their movement. Doesn't make sense at all. Sorry, getting to replies in between hedges. I don't mean reactionaries are conservatives as an inherently bad thing. Again, it's the goals and the issues they're conservative on. Yeah, okay. Don't mean reactionaries are conservatives as an inherently bad thing. Yes, yeah. So I think they're like phenomena. That's right. So reaction, revolution, conservatism, progressivism, and like it's the intent behind those forces, which make them, I guess you could say, good or bad in the subjective sense for the subject as opposed to the object. Getting all philosophical today. Damn. All right. So let's have a listen to someone speak about this. Now, I think this person is a neo-reactionary. Like they've got the little laser eye thing going on. So like we might just quickly check that. Uber Soy. Like what a name for a channel, seriously. Welcome. This is a place where I talk about culture, politics, psychology, and other things. Sometimes I'm doing meme videos. Sometimes I'm responding to other people. To sum up my belief, I'm a cultural right-winger. Eh? But I usually score somewhere in the center for political tests, though I don't subscribe to any ideology in particular, and perhaps it's for the better. Dun, dun, dun. Debate, bro. Okay. So anyway, let's have a listen to this guy try and break it down, because I'm assuming this is his people potentially on his side of the political spectrum, so he might do them some justice. And here we go. You can see this fucking neo-reactionary, this Dark Enlightenment stuff, like with the laser eyes and everything. This is supposed to be a signal for them, like a crab, I guess, a spade crab. So I don't understand what the spade thing is about. Did it tell us about the spade? Didn't, did it? What's with the spade in the crab? Spade is often interpreted as a symbol of order and hierarchy. Reference to the ace of spades. Traditional symbol of death and authority, especially in war. It's painted on soldiers' helmets in Vietnam. Power and dominance in card games. Cathedral motif. Crab possesses the cathedral. Oh, there it is. So the cathedral is a spade. So the cathedral is like this idea from Mencius Moldbug, is that why he's called a bug? Mold bug. Interesting. is the cathedral is this idea that there are these institutions that uphold this progressivism in the form of liberal democratic society. So it's not the politicians that hold the power or the capitalists that hold the power or something like that. It's these institutions. So it's the bureaucracy, it's the media, it's like the academic institutions like the universities. All of these institutions come together and hold the real power in society, and they set the kind of the discussion and the tone, and like all policies and all decisions are kind of made within this Overton window of progressivism that is set by, yes, universities, media organizations, and the bureaucratic arms of government. And so that's where the power resides. And so capitalists aren't powerful, they just have the money, so they pay off people in the media, in the universities, in the bureaucracy to get their bidding done. And so the spade, like the arc of a cathedral, the high point of a cathedral must represent the cathedral trapped inside the crab, and the crab is anti-progressivism because it doesn't move in a linear direction. It moves from side to side. Interesting. It's all coming together. Order, elite sovereignty, post-ironic fatalism. Progress is dead. Long live the crab. Oh my God, these people. So layered. I like your point with unions is to conserve the power of labor. Like your point too with unions is to conserve the power of labor. It is. And it's important in a capitalist society to be able to have levers of power that protect the interests of the working class. But like they also hold back the development of capitalism, which is antithetical to the movement towards revolution ultimately, unfortunately. Love how it listens to MysterE during his social production. Very apropos, yes. And anyone else who listens to me while working is like, that's where it's at. Ace of Spades, like that one song in Tony Hawk Pro Skating, yes. So just occult nihilism in the desperate far right. Yes, I think it's a big surprise, really, says Pious Jackpot. Just occult nihilism in the desperate far right. Then there's a lot of nihilism, I think, inbuilt in, and the occult, the idea of this like being an in-group and a sect kind of thing, like it's just for them and it's all like mystical, and like they understand how the world really works, and like the nihilistic element of all of that like, the world is kind of screwed, and like, is someone going to do something about it? Like, does it really have any meaning? Like at the end of the day, like, it's all just going to happen anyway. So let's just watch the shit show unfold kind of thing. And so like that actually is pretty emblematic, Pious Jackpot. That is really actually, sorry, Jacob. How do I actually say your name properly? Jacob? That's actually pretty emblematic of these neo-reactionaries, because like they actually want to sit back and watch the world burn kind of thing. So I don't know if they actually want to get involved in the political system at all. They're not like forming a libertarian party or something like that. They're just neo-reactionaries. They just want to watch the world burn, I think. Motorhead. It is Motorhead. And it's a great song too. It was sarcastic because it happens too often with them. Yeah. All right. Let's have a quick listen to what this guy has to say. I don't know exactly. I'm thinking this is going to be pretty heavy, like philosophically heavy. But like let's give it a crack and see what this guy has to say, kind of thing. But like, yeah, it's probably going to be pretty dense. So put your thinking caps on, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going in to get an introduction of the Dark Enlightenment philosophy by Uber Soy. Okay, and like talk about irony, like having to use irony for everything. Like you can't have an actual conversation; it's got to be ironic. Uber Soy, okay? But I'm not actually soy at all. I hate soy, but I'm uber
This
soy.
video is going to be a little introduction to a certain group of philosophers and political thinkers that are too reactionary in their beliefs to be considered a part of the intellectual dark web. Instead, they refer to themselves as the Dark Enlightenment or just neo-reactionary. But before I will list their beliefs as well as explain their core concept and ideas, it is important to understand how they got there in the first place. The most influential philosopher of the Dark Enlightenment, as well as the person who came up with the necessary concepts and ideas behind it that other philosophers are continuing to use nowadays, is named Curtis Yarvin, popularly known as Manchester Moldbug. Curtis has conceded to the left's post hoc reasoning of history, where the left would constantly win battles against the rather losing conservative side in their march of history, essentially using
Can I just say, like, how is interesting is it that like everybody, like either side of the political spectrum, always thinks that they're the loser in the long trajectory, long march of history. Like leftists always put themselves as the underdog against like conservatives who have like all the capitalist backing and all that sort of stuff. And like these guys, these neo-reactionaries, Curtis Yarvin and co, are all like, oh, we're the underdog in history because like the general trajectory is towards progressivism. So like we're always the losers in this fight, man. We're always the losers. It was sarcastic because it happens often with them. Similar thing with the Order of Nine Angels. It's just sad. I prefer rice. Uber soy confirmed soy boy. You prefer rice. I don't know the Order of Nine Angels. I haven't come across it.
Hegelian dialectics, Curtis side, where the left would constantly win battles against the rather losing conservative side in their march of history. Essentially using Hegelian dialectics, Curtis came to the conclusion that history always marches in one direction. That is a lefty progressive direction. However, his interpretation of progress is not fully positive nor it is negative. He identifies the left to be antinomian, meaning being anti-societal.
Anyone ever come across that word before? Antinomian? Antinomian? This is gonna be fucking dense as fuck. Antinomianism is the belief or the doctrine that under certain spiritual or ideological conditions, laws, especially moral or religious laws, do not apply to the believer or the individual. I think we can all be safe to say that we're antinomian, or we have antinomian tendencies. I don't think laws, especially moral and religious ones, really are all encompassing enough to be able to capture all of our desires and wants as humans. Originally referred to the idea that faith alone is necessary for salvation and that moral or divine law, like the Ten Commandments, no longer binds a believer. This view was debated during the Protestant Reformation. Interesting. What's it called again? How do you say it? Antinomian. Nomium. Antinomian, I should have said. Yeah, antinomian. Okay, reactionary memes. Here we go. In some corners of online ideology, including certain neo-reactionary or esoteric right circles, antinomianism is invoked to mock liberal universalism. Your moral laws do not apply to us. Assert superiority. We are beyond your good and evil. Flirt with chaos or nihilism. Calling someone antinomian may be praise or critique, depending on the speaker's ideological position. Fuck, that helps, doesn't it? Fucking irony, eh?
laws identifies the left to be antinomian, meaning being anti-societal laws or anti-customs, as opposed to pronomian, which are the conservatives or even those who will be against polyamorous marriages, for instance. Antinomians are degenerating social bonds and deconstructing society step by step, he argues, while pronomians are the ones who would slow down the process of deconstruction and degeneration or even attempt to reinforce societal laws or customs.
Yeah, so this is an important point when it comes to neo-reactionary philosophy, I guess you would say, or their outlook on life, is like it's closely associated with Nick Land's view of like how the world works and like how everything works. Is like the universe, the cosmos, like everything has started and like disintegrates. So like things come into being and then they disintegrate. And so like basically these progressive ideas, I guess, are smashing or breaking down our social values, breaking down society, and they cut it off, they chip away at it one by one. They just want to destroy society and break it down again. And conservatives want to kind of keep it in stasis. They don't want it to be disintegrated by progressivism, I guess you would call it. So like this all stems from a general idea that society, like everything in the universe that comes into being, disintegrates after a while. And that can be through natural forces, it could be through other things. The Order of the Nine Angels is essentially a white supremacist satanic cult that views the Abrahamic cult and liberal values as weak, and that the Imperium will rise from the ground and destroy all that is inferior, and mankind will conquer the galaxy. The Order of Nine Angels is essentially a white supremacist satanic cult that views the Abrahamic cult and liberal values as weak, and that the Imperium will rise from the ground to destroy all that is inferior. Interesting. That's all this right-wing stuff, eh? It's fucking crazy. It's all centered around race too. They can't let go of race. Really important.
Customs, but they barely ever succeed. Does it ring a bell? For the fans of his work, it certainly does, because they constantly.
The hell is this 40k canon? Is like, are you talking about 40k as in like is that Warhammer? Is that a Warhammer reference? I guess all of this stuff is pretty tied together though, isn't it?
They apply this critique to modern
Warhammer,
Western and American democracies.
It does seem like all of this stuff is tied together. The fantasy of like, you know, this kind of, I guess, sci-fi style fantasy, and like the religious connotations and the traditional and like kind of imperial nature of all of that galactic conquest stuff. One YouTuber called them 40k LARPers. Interesting. The Nine Angels
in particular, but more on that later. Instead, what is important to remember for now is that this whole theory is based on one important assumption, that is, a linear view of history, when progress always marches left. I, for instance, would disagree with that, because not all egalitarian values that became popular in the West are leftist values. I would not equate egalitarianism to leftism, and I would also argue that it is particularly a Western phenomenon, since other societies progress in directions that support the dominant values of their cultures. Finally, the left does not equal progress, nor they have a monopoly to call themselves progressive, but at the end of the day, that is just me. Some people may be black-pilled if they wish to, I don't want to prove them otherwise. And before I proceed any further,
Does MysterE not love Jesus and or galactic conquests? Yes, I think you could say that. I'm not into galactic conquests, no. And like me and Jesus don't always see eye to eye on everything. But like, I'll tell you this though, Jerry Poppins, Jesus was quite the revolutionary communist. I'll leave that with you. Take it or leave it. Their prophecy originally was the Imperium would rise up in 2010, but well, Hey, there's still time. There's still time. And like, isn't that interesting? Because like that was the time when all this neo-reactionary stuff was happening and taking form, as well as like the early 2000s and the 2010s. That's like the derivation of all this stuff. So they're all interconnected. It's all internet culture stuff as well. This is where the new philosophy's at, ladies and gentlemen. If we've been scratching our heads recently about like, what we're doing here and whether this is redundant, meeting online, having revolutionary reading groups, well, the new age of philosophy is all done in the online space, not in universities anymore. So if Mencius Moldbug or if the Cathedral theory is out the window now, Curtis Yarvin, it's because you failed to see that the new Cathedral is actually the online world. And like, isn't that funny and ironic that you, a blogger with your fingers all over Silicon Valley and the tech bro culture, didn't see that one coming, and how important the online world was to the Cathedral. It's really funny, actually. Take that, Curtis Yarvin.
Consider it necessary to introduce you to another important concept coined by Curtis Yarvin that you may have already heard somewhere before, because it gained a certain amount of attention even in the academia as well as outside the circle of people who are associated with the Dark Enlightenment. That concept is called the Cathedral. Sounds like a secret conspiracy organization associated with religion, and if you thought so too, you're not far from the truth, because Curtis, as an edgy atheist, believes that Christianity evolved in such a way that gave birth to antinomian sentiments to take power in the West that are now referred to as the Cathedral, because they not only evolved from Christianity according to him, but also happen to have a lot of dogmas, as well as share a lot of myths of their own that are constantly reinforced within the Cathedral itself. Let me be more clear and elaborate on it even further. You see, a cathedral is not a person or a specific institution, nor it is even a place. The cathedral is the current lefty consensus on how a society is ought to be run. Its power is supranational, which evades borders and exists.
Isn't it funny? Like, can you see what quote they're using from Noam Chomsky? The smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow a very lively debate within that spectrum. In order to justify their worldview on this one, they're like dipping into the ideas of leftist radical thought, I guess you could say, potentially, depending on how you see him as radical or not. But he's definitely a lefty. And his analysis of the way the world works is using to kind of basically decry the lefty establishment that has its hold over the entire world at the moment. Very interesting.
Within all spheres of culture and institutions. They are that leftist cultural hegemony that I sometimes talk in my videos. To expose or identify the cathedral, it is enough for one to take a hypothetical survey of the current sentiments and ideas that are circulating in the media, popular culture, entertainment industry, academia, and other institutions, especially the newer ideas that would be quickly picked by lefty progressivists, and those would represent the cathedral. Now, going back to democracy and the Dark Enlightenment's critiques of it, democracy is essentially fake. I bet you never heard that one before. However, they add something new to it. They see the American democracy operating within the realms of the cathedral, where on one hand you have the antinomial Democratic Party that they call the inner party, and on the other you have the pronomial Republican Party, which is the outer party. They argue that the differences in policy between those two parties are very insignificant, and eventually the outer party will come to represent the inner party from 10 to 20 years before. The goals of the other party are pretty simple: slow down the progress in order to avoid panic as well as to provide the public with a sense of choice. The other goal of the other party is to mobilize the left by portraying the other party as a threat to progress, creating a feeling of menace, that the right might reassert themselves and take all of your rights away if you're not a straight white male. Just to refresh your memory and remember what they said about Trump's plans when he will take office or some other conservative candidate, they face the same backlash every time. The Cathedral over-exaggerates the power of the other party, while in reality the other party has its hands tied up and would never dare to reverse the march of history because it has as much power as the Queen of England. Now, I think it's time to introduce you to another thing from the Dark Enlightenment, which, although was written by a person from the outside, was highly influential in shaping the thinking of the Dark Enlightenment philosophers, that is the three laws of politics by a historian of the Soviet Union, Robert Conquest. The first law indicates that everyone is conservative about
slow down. Robert Conquest. He's a historian of the Soviet Union. Doesn't sound very Russian. It's kind of hilarious. Does he understand who Chomsky is? Yeah, I know, right? It's pretty funny that they're using them to justify the world. But it just shows you how critical the leftist critique of the world is for helping to formulate these, like, basically right-wing ideas. Like, they need to have a good critique of modern society, and so they're dipping into the place where there is ample critique of modern society, I guess you would say, in leftist intellectualism, in what is it called? Anti-modian? No. What's the word? I should learn this one. Antinomian. They're dipping into antinomian intellectual theory in order to strengthen their worldview. From Claude, that wasn't a direct quote from Chomsky. Ooh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Who would have thought, hey? Because it looks like one of those memes that people make just to have like a quote of someone, and like someone's not written the right quote in the meme. Hey, Claude? Hey? Whoa. I'd recommend the infographics show, Why a Satanic Group is on the Rise Again. It gives a more in-depth explanation. Thank you, Pius Jacobot. I hope I'm saying that right. Jag, in the censored comments, the ideas expressed in this paraphrase come primarily from Chomsky's work with Edward Herman in their 1988 book, Manufacturing Consent, The Political Economy of the Mass Media. In this influential work, they analyze how mass media serves as a system for communicating messages that support the interests of the dominant political and economic groups. The actual concept being referenced is what Chomsky has called the bounds of acceptable discourse, or the range of permissible opinion. He has discussed this idea in numerous interviews, lectures, and writings throughout his career. Yeah, like you can't really go too far into Chomsky's work without hearing his thoughts about this. The idea remains one of Chomsky's most cited concepts about how the media and power function in democratic societies, where censorship works not through explicit prohibition, but through framing the boundaries of serious and responsible discussion, which is like the Overton window, I guess, right? And like, isn't it interesting how it's just like, you know, in Chomsky's days, in wild 80s, right? It was just like, nah, they don't do this overtly kind of thing. They do it other ways where you wouldn't really know you're being controlled. And like, here we are writing stuff in like a censored comment section because we can't get conversation going on the platform that we're choosing to all communicate on. Like, we're actually being censored now. Like, you know, it's not even, you should do a stream on inverted authoritarianism. Yeah, there we go. Some good terminology there. We're basically going in that direction in this stream. There's Pretty much, yeah. Interesting, eh? Interesting. Antonian. Antinomian. Nominan. Nomian? Antinomian. I gotta remember that word. Okay, Robert Conquest. Robert Conquest doesn't sound very Russian, and he's a Soviet historian. Briefly, please, for God's sakes. Oh, it's struggling. He's a British American historian and poet. And there you go. And his most famous book is The Great Terror. Well. So the neo-reactionary canon is written by people that describe the French Revolution as the Great Terror, or the Reign of Terror, and and another person that describes what happens in the Soviet Union as the Great Terror, which documents the mass arrests, executions, and gulag imprisonments under Stalin. He was one of the first Western scholars to argue that millions died during Stalin's policies, at a time when many Western intellectuals still defended or downplayed Soviet actions. After the Soviet archives opened in 1990, many of his estimates were confirmed or even exceeded. There you go. He coined Conquest's laws of politics. Everyone is conservative about what they know best. Interesting, eh? There's a political notion for you. When you know something well, you're rather conservative about it. You seem to want to conserve it. You get all reactionary when you know something, eh? Manipulation in its strongest form is slick and nearly impossible to see. Whoa. Nafan says Matt Taibbi was great on the evolution of manufacturing consent. Definitely has fallen off in recent years, but Hate Incorporated is still a great resource. Yeah, I've heard about the fall of Ye Old Taibbi, and apparently he's quite, like right-wing, like commercially right-wing these days. He's on like Fox News, and like represents kind of that incel pipeline, I guess you would say. But yes, I haven't come across Hate Inc. I haven't digested that. All right, let's see what. So everyone's conservative about what they know best.
He knows best, and it is a universal law applicable to any political opinion and institution, regardless whether it is left or right. And if you are confused with a communist...
Any organization not explicitly right-wing sooner or later becomes left-wing. Isn't that interesting? Because, I would describe, and I've had discussions with people in this stream, I'm sure, about this phenomenon, which is like the Democratic Party is like over time becoming like economically anyway. I don't know about philosophically or ideally. They're not like economically, they are becoming way more right wing. And over time, they seem to be completely forgetting any working class interests altogether and just can't detach themselves from policies that suit the capitalist classes. Like if they were, left wing, like you Americans in the room here, like you guys would have fucking healthcare, Medicare or something like that, like proper, like universal healthcare. If they were truly everything becomes left wing over time. Like I don't know about these laws, man. They're a bit loose.
Intersectional feminist fury being a conservative, don't worry, they are conservative only with respect to being a communist intersectional feminist fury. Hopefully that cleared it up for you, so we could move on to the next law, which states the following: any organization not explicitly right-wing sooner or later becomes left-wing. and this can be observed by the actions of one-time neutral and apolitical institutions or corporations taking leftist political stances. In the realm of corporations and businesses, this phenomenon is also called the woke capital, meaning an economical entity that became an actor for the Cathedral. Finally, the third law states that the simplest way to explain the behavior of any bureaucratic organization is to assume that it is controlled by a cabal of its enemies. If you read the context, he implies that any bureaucracy starts off as a distinct and unique organization, but over time will do everything besides its original function. Think of the universities, for example. Now, although mostly his second law is often referenced in their discourse, especially when arguing about the left's inevitable progress, I have decided to mention the first and third laws nonetheless.
That's interesting, right? Like the idea that a bureaucracy becomes, when it becomes institutionalized and permanent, fails to serve its function anymore. At the start, it's okay. Like that's just anarchist theory right there. Like that is not a unique law to this Robert Conquest dude, I would say. Organizations that say they are down the middle, in the end up being more conservative for profit. We're getting into cultural capitalism. This is, yeah. I think we're going to have to continue this tomorrow. This is quite the fucking rabbit hole, to be honest. Like, I feel like I have a better understanding of what neo-reactionaries are now from where we started at the beginning of this stream. Like, it's closely, obviously associated with the Dark Enlightenment, which is a complete rejection of like liberal democratic society and liberal democratic values. It's just like, it's just entirely like this stuff is wrong, and it's all based on like, and like most like right-wing critiques in the world, it's all based on lefty nonsense, like lefty ideals of being like progressive and stuff like that. Like that's all this has got to do with. And like their whole theoretical outlook is just, how do we beat the progressivism out of society? And like the way it seems that they want to do that is to bring back the monarchy. They want a hard man in control that's gonna, you know, it's gonna get his belt out and he's gonna start, you know, whipping everyone back into shape and making sure boys are boys and girls are girls again, so we can all get back to, you know, accelerating capitalism and the demise of the human race. Like that's what we should really be concentrating on. Let's be honest. So yes, like I said, we'll leave it there. But thank you everyone for joining me on this. This was a reading group today. A revolutionary reading group today. There's no argument there because we've all been chiming in with our opinions on what the fuck is going on in the neo-reactionary world, and how it's all integrated with a lot of crazy shit, like even 40K stuff. And what were they called? The 9 Angels. So 4IS, thank you very much. Ollie Atlas, thanks for your contributions. You were on fire today. Jag, thank you as always. Jerry Poppins, cutting through with some good old humor, lightening the conversation, the fun. You were getting deep and philosophical today. All right. Thank you. I haven't missed anyone. I do not think so. It's better than a tutorial. There we go. But yes, thank you. And tomorrow we are on Twitch, and we'll continue kind of this rabbit hole, and like you'll see if we come out the other fucking side. But you know, think about it overnight. Maybe you like the trajectory of progressivism, the linear trajectory of progressivism. Maybe you like to move like a crab. You think about it, and we'll catch you tomorrow, and you tell me whether you want to be a crab or a linear progressive. You tell me. And until next time, please remember, I am, you are, we are a MysterE. See you tomorrow. Cheers.